To Your Excellency Minister of Communications and Informatics, Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Joni G. Plate.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Master of Ceremony at today's event, Ralph Tambubolon and Sarah Wayne.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Shalom, Om Swastiastu.
Namo Buddhaya, greetings of virtue, peace, and good health to all of us. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen who attend both in person and online. Allow us to extend our warmest welcome to the G20 Digital Innovation Network.
Let's give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Sarah Wayne.
And my name is Ralph Tambubolon. It is an honor and a privilege to be your master of ceremony at today's event. Now, in accordance with health protocols and public safety, both Sarah and I are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Wearing face masks is in line with your personal discretion. Let's remember to be mindful of others as well. Thank you. Now we would like to greet and welcome Your Excellency, Minister of Communications and Informatics, Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Joni G. Plate. Chair of G20 Digital Economy Working Group, Secretary General of Ministry of Communications and Informatics, Ibu Mira Taiba. Co-chair of G20 Digital Economy Working Group, Minister's Special Advisor for Digital Policy and Human Resources Department, Bapak Dedi Permadi. Director General of Informatics Applications, Bapak Samuel Abriani Pangerapan. Minister of IT, Saudi Arabia, Mr. Abdullah Al-Swaha. Minister of Communications and Information, Singapore, Ms. Josephine Teo.
Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, South Africa, Ms. Humbozo Fofi Silence Enta Shavani. Secretary General of ITU, Mr. Haolin Zhao. UNSG Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, Mrs. Armida Sasia Ali Shabana. Vice President Engineering and Research of Google, Mr. Yossi Matias. Head of Corporate Strategy Zoom, Mr. Abis Arora. All VIP guests, delegations, and invitees of G20 Digital Innovation Network. And once again, may I have a round of applause for our event today, G20 Digital Innovation Network. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Indonesian G20 Presidency initiated the G20 Digital Innovation Network, or G20 DIN, as an extension to the G20 Innovation League organized during the Italian G20 Presidency. The G20 DIN aims to further foster cooperation between public and private innovation players, startups, and corporations by becoming a premier forum to share knowledge, encourage discussion, and build partnerships among global innovative players.
The G20 DIN in Bali, Indonesia, on the 2nd to the 4th of September 2022 with the theme, The Rise of Digital Economy, Post-Pandemic Recovery and Beyond, aims to highlight the message of Indonesian G20 Presidency and the Digital Economy Working Group, DEWG, which supports stronger world recovery in a collective manner. G20 DIN aims to become a premier forum to share knowledge, encourage discussion, and build partnerships among global innovation players, showcase innovative solutions from startups that address some of the most urgent issues in the key focus areas, such as healthcare, green and renewable energy, education technology, financial inclusivity, and supply chain.
The sharing of knowledge and insight to an innovation emerging during the COVID-19 pandemic and supporting post-COVID-19 recovery, enhance multi-stakeholder partnerships by providing business opportunities and momentums to network and also collaborate. And ladies and gentlemen, the event will also invite more than 200 prominent startups and venture capitals, government officials, public policy professionals, and corporations from the G20 countries in attendance both offline and online.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let us begin. We would like to invite Minister of Communications and Informatics, Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Johnny G. Plate, to deliver a welcoming speech.
Thank you. Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Namo Buddhaya. Greetings of virtue, peace, and good health to all of us. Excellencies, my best friend ministers, Minister Abdullah Al-Swaha of Saudi Arabia, Minister Kombutso Safeni of South Africa. She will be here in a moment. Minister Josephine Teo, my very good friend, Digital Minister of Singapore. Distinguished delegates, G20 members, and invitees to this Digital Economic Working Group. Ladies and gentlemen, again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Welcome to Nusa Dua, Bali. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome all of you who join us physically and virtually at the G20 Digital Innovation Network, G20 DIN, here in Nusa Dua, Bali, Indonesia. Allow me to extend my gratitude to the G20 member states, Troikas, Italy and India, invited countries, and the knowledge partners for your continued support in organizing this productive event that is hoped to advance the critical role of digital innovation today. We all have witnessed how digital innovation plays an important role in responding to the global COVID-19 pandemic and expediting post-COVID-19 recovery. Post-pandemic recovery, particularly in supporting micro businesses and startups. In line with the rate of digital innovation, the valuation of digital economy itself reached 15.5% of the total global gross domestic product, growing 2.5 times faster than in the last 15 years. This is in accordance with the World Bank report this year. By 2030, it is predicted that 70% of new value creation in the economy will be based on digitally enabled business models, showing how digital innovation have and will continue to play a crucial role in driving future economies. Taking into relevance the culminations of the Digital Economic Working Group meetings, the Indonesian G20 Presidency has put the utmost importance to the growth of national and international, domestic, and global startup ecosystem, in which the role of digital innovation has been thoroughly supported upon by the G20 members. This particular topic is highlighted on the first DEWG priority issue, connectivity and post-COVID-19 recovery, where resilient and high-quality connectivity has been recognized as the fundamental element in facilitating an inclusive, people-centric, and empowering digital economy that bolsters the innovations of startups. We are cognizant that the maintaining of well-functioning digital economies needs to be supported by a sustainable and secure digital infrastructure to provide affordable and accessible digital public services that would advance their innovations growth. We are now taking a good look of how Indonesian digital economy has continued to flourish. In 2021, the value of Indonesia's digital economy has reached 70 billion United States dollar and to grow up to 315.5 billion United States dollars in 2030, which presents a stellar potential for Indonesia's future economy. Such potential is not drawn without strong foundations of Indonesia's ability to record high-performing homegrown startups. In 2018, a study from Bain estimated that by 2024, ASEAN region will give rise to at least 10 unicorn tech companies. From then on, Indonesia has managed to contribute a total of 2 decacorns and 14 unicorns recorded by Indonesian tech companies within the past 5 years. This shows that startups has again set the strong foundation of the promising trajectory of Indonesia's digital economy growth path. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the vast potential of Indonesian digital economy motivates the Indonesian G20 Presidency to champion the G20 Digital Innovation Network as a side event to the series of Digital Economic Working Group meetings, promoting the theme of the rise of digital economy, post-pandemic recovery, and beyond. In the next 2 days, I trust the G20 DIN to facilitate meetings, pitchings, and discussions that will generate commercial deals and collaborations on digital innovations. We believe the organizations of this event will be the important catalyst for the digital economic growth through enriching collaborations between startup, venture capitals, and corporations, domestic and international scale, and national and international scales, domestic and global scales. Let us together continue to strengthen our systems, our synergies, realizing an inclusive, empowering, and sustainable global recovery through digital transformation. Recover together, recover stronger. Thank you very much and have a nice weekend in Bali, in Nusa Dua, Indonesia. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om, Santi, Santi, Santi Om, Namo Buddhaya. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak Joni G. Plate. And the Digital Economy Working Group, DEWG Forum, Indonesia is also championing the G20 Digital Innovation Network, G20 DIN, and this year carrying the theme, The Rise of Digital Economy, Post-Pandemic Recovery and Beyond.
And next, ladies and gentlemen, we will listen to remarks, which will be delivered by Ms. Josephine Teo, the Minister of Communication and Information of Singapore.
Pak Johnny, Minister for Communications and Informatics for Indonesia, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, this is a completely unplanned speech. My very good friend, Pak Johnny, has asked that I address the meeting, and I'm happy to oblige. I'd firstly like to congratulate our Indonesian colleagues for the outstanding leadership as well as the excellent hospitality that has been extended to the digital economy ministers and for hosting this meeting at the beautiful island of Bali with its rich cultural traditions and also many modern conveniences that we can enjoy. I'm sure nobody had problems with 4G, Wi-Fi, and we were all able to stay connected. Singapore really appreciates being invited to join in this meeting, and we want to articulate and express our full support to the priorities that have been identified as part of the G20 Presidency of Indonesia, where it concerns digital developments. Several of the areas that have been prioritized include digital connectivity, digital inclusion, and very importantly, in order to support global digital innovation, cross-border data flows, and what you have articulately described as digital free flow with trust. Singapore also very much appreciates our Indonesian colleagues for making a special effort to organize the Digital Innovation Network and this tech conference. In order to show our support for this initiative, we have from Singapore a delegation of about 12 business executives who are very keen on extending and deepening their collaborations with their Indonesian counterparts. As a matter of interest, Pak Johnny had earlier spoken about our interest in promoting startups and micro as well as small and medium enterprises. Actually, if you look back over the past few years, between Indonesia and Singapore, we have produced 75% of the unicorns that have emerged from Southeast Asia. We have clearly got an alignment of interest in promoting further success of our enterprise ecosystems among some of the companies here. In fact, I see one of the unicorns, Caro. If you have ever had reason to buy or sell a car, Caro is the website to go to. Caro is the platform to use. You can applaud for him. Let me just conclude my remarks by saying that I believe there is a lot more that we can all gain from promoting digital innovation. We all want to see our economies recover strongly from the pandemic, and yet we all know that there are geopolitical, geoeconomic forces at play that could very well disrupt this recovery process. But let us set our minds to promoting mutual cooperation and strengthening the channels of communication so that our business ecosystems can continue to interact seamlessly with each other, as well as identify joint opportunities that can bring further growth to our digital economies. Thank you once again for inviting us.
Thank you once again, Ms. Josephine Mateo. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two keynote speakers this morning who will present about rocky shoals ahead, leveraging digital transformation to embrace the uncertainties of the future. We would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Yossi Matias, Vice President, Engineering and Research at Google, a world-renowned expert in artificial intelligence and in leadership of global-scale product and technology innovation. Yossi's teams work on impact-driven research, innovation, and moonshots, advancing AI to help transform health, conversational AI, and the climate crisis. Yossi is the global lead of Google's Health AI, and he is the global lead of Google's Crisis Response Initiative and serves on Google's Sustainability Board. And his leadership on conversational AI also pioneered innovation to help transform the phone experience.
He is the founding lead of Google's AI for Social Good and of Google for Startup Accelerator. Yossi was on Google Search leadership for over a decade, leading strategic features and technologies. Yossi published over 100 papers and is the inventor of over 60 patents. He is a recipient of the Godel Prize, an ACM Fellow, and a recipient of the ACM Kanellakis Theory and Practice Award for a seminal work on large-scale data analytics. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome the Vice President, Engineering and Research at Google, Mr. Yossi Matias.
Selamat pagi. Good morning. Thank you so much, Sarah and Ralph, for the kind introduction. Thank you, ministers, distinguished guests, delegates, entrepreneurs. And congratulations, of course, of a successful G20 presidency year. Now, it's really wonderful to be here again with you in Bali. This is my first time in Bali, but I was in Jakarta 5 years ago. This picture was taken in my last visit to Indonesia in 2017, where I had the opportunity to meet some pretty amazing startups. I really love startups and the entrepreneurship that they can bring. Actually, I really like also testing their products. So, so in this case, testing the product, of course, had to do with braving the traffic in Jakarta with a Gojek experience, and this was fascinating. Now, I was and continue to be inspired by the rapid pace of digitization, innovation in this country, and the appetite for innovation and growth. I think this is really the future. It's really my honor to be back and to be talking with you about an important topic that is really close to my heart. It's really about technology, how we can use technology, and in particular AI, to help address challenges and to do work and advancement to the benefit of society. Now, artificial intelligence is now everywhere. You know, over the last decade, it went through a revolution from initial steps into something that is everywhere. You know, it's, many of us are using AI, many of you are using AI in your startups. We're all benefiting from AI in our daily life. It's really impacting all aspects of life, from finance to transportation to commerce to health, agriculture, and more. Now, since AI is so powerful, as the saying goes, with power comes great responsibility, we do need to use AI in a very responsible way. That's why at Google, we set up our AI principles that we hold ourselves accountable for and we think are really important. We work on designing AI systems that are beneficial, safe, fair, accountable to people. They incorporate privacy design principles set to high scientific level and standards, and available for others to be used responsibly. Now, with that in mind, AI has potential to help address some of the most challenging societal problems that we have today. And we do have quite a few. So, my team at Google is on a mission to advance AI and use AI to the benefit of society and to impact lives of billions. Let me discuss 3 areas that I'm particularly excited about. AI for climate sustainability, conversational AI, and AI for health. I'll touch briefly on each of them. Let's start with our use of AI in climate and sustainability. We all know that climate change is no longer a distant threat. It's something that we actually read about and feel very almost on a daily basis. Around the world, we have wildfires, floods, and extreme weather conditions, which are actually exceeding. We know that there are many more of those this year than last year, and we see the trends. They affect people's health, economies, and really they're becoming a threat to our planet if we're not going to take some action. So we urgently need solutions, and technology can play a role. Now, Google's commitment for sustainability goes back to its early years. In fact, Google was the first company to become carbon neutral in 2007. And by 2030, we aim to be the first major company to operate 24/7 carbon-free energy. We're helping cities and local governments take action to reduce carbon emissions through various initiatives. And we're looking to see how to actually help people make choices that are going to be more sustainable, and together they really aggregate into substantial impact. And to look into how to empower consumers in making those choices. Now, here in Indonesia, we launched the Environmental Insight Explorer to help cities measure and analyze emissions resources and identify strategies to reduce emissions. Because we see increased interest by everybody, organizations, governments, cities, consumers, and part of the opportunity is really to enable that and to help it done more effectively. Many of our initiatives to mitigate the climate crisis rely on AI. Take Greenlight. We know that traveling by car is one of the most carbon-intensive activities that people are actually contributing to the carbon emission. And we know that a lot of these carbon emission is happening in the city. So one of the AI research groups that I lead came up with the following observation, that by using AI and analyzing traffic data in intersections, we can actually reduce the wait time in intersection. Now, of course, we all could appreciate the improved experience if we don't need to wait as much in the intersection, but it turns out that this has huge impact on the environment because a lot of the carbon is emitted during those intersections. So by actually analyzing the data and optimizing for that, we can try to reduce the waiting time, and as it turns out, build machine learning models that are going to improve on that and help the cities make those adjustments in a very simple way. And based on the pilots that we did in several cities around the world, we found out that we can actually reduce up to 20% of wait time, which has a big impact on carbon. And our aim is to see how to scale that further and enable more cities around the world to take advantage of that and have both better experience for drivers as well as reduce the carbon in the emission out there. And of course, this is accepted in great enthusiasm by cities that actually tried it out. And by scaling for more intersections, this could actually have a pretty big impact on the overall carbon emission worldwide. Now, alongside the efforts to mitigate the carbon emission, unfortunately, we already see the ramifications of the climate crisis, as I mentioned, with floods, with more wildfires, with droughts and more. So the question is, how can we use technology in order to do something about it? From locust prediction, which impacts food security, to tackling wildfires and floods. So let me talk about floods, because this is one of the most deadliest and significant risk in terms of economic damage and casualties. In fact, there are estimated thousands of people who perish actually every year because of floods. And a few years ago, we actually looked into, can we do anything with AI and technology to do something about it? And if what 5 years ago looked like almost impossible to do, of addressing this dire problem that affects, also estimated to have $10 billion in damages, then here's an example of something I actually experienced in my own eyes. Just 3 years ago, I was visiting the Bihar county in India, and this is a village called Nauar. I was there just 2 days after a flood came through that village. This video was taken just 2 days before I was there. But actually, the flood did not occur during the day. It occurred during the night, where everybody was sleeping. 2 people died that day. And in fact, many more would have died if not for a brave fellow and his friends. The guy standing next to me is Rakesh. He and his 2 friends actually saved about 20 people that otherwise would have perished. And behind us, you can see the stranded villagers. And you can also see what remained of that village. Now the question is, can we use technology in order to give people heads up about a flood coming their way so they're not surprised? And again, as it turns out, that we can use AI and cloud technology and other scientific progress to actually do something about it. So in fact, what my team did was building up simulation models, running thousands of simulations on cloud, using satellite imagery that actually map the lay of the land, working with academics and advancing science also to find out the hydraulic flow in various circumstances, and using a lot of machine learning in order to try and adapt it so as to learn what's going on. And what we see here is the kind of simulations of water going through those rivers. And even though this is a notoriously difficult technical problem, it turns out that we could actually predict floods. And last year, we actually sent out over 115 million notifications to people at risk in India and Bangladesh, alerting them of floods coming their way, 8 hours or more before the floods actually came, with accuracy of 10 centimeters of the water level, which allowed people to take actions, allowed the various counties and villages to actually take action and help people evacuate on time and do it in a very reliable way. What we see here is actually a picture I took with my own phone in a place that we actually compared what we can see and what's happening in the reality. So this means that we can actually take technology and solve problems that can actually save lives. And we're looking to see how to expand it. Currently, we're covering over 360 million people in India and Bangladesh. And we're looking to see how to scale it globally so that we can actually give alerts to people in a timely fashion. And this is done in a combination of advancing technology, using AI, advancing scientific research. Actually, what we see here is that the papers that were published by the team are 2 of the most cited papers in hydrology, and we collaborate with academics around the world. And of course, the partnership with governments is a key and a crucial aspect of all of that. So this is an example of how we can use technology in order to help save lives, and we have efforts in wildfires and other efforts around climate and climate crisis. I will switch to a second area which I'm really excited about, which is how AI can help with conversations. And conversational AI, the reason why I'm excited about it is that if you think about it, this is the natural interaction that we have among ourselves, and when we can unlock some of those capabilities, this opens up so many different opportunities. Now, over the past few years, we've seen huge progress on basic technologies such as understanding speech and being able to convert it into text, and conversely, the text-to-speech, and more recently, interactions. And this actually opens up huge opportunities. In fact, what we see in the last few years is, just couple of years, is a revolution in what is called large language models. From starting with BERT and then going to T5 and GPT-3 and Lambda. These are large language models that allow us to understand speech, understand text and language in a way that is unprecedented. And of course, now we even have it together with images. So you can now actually have technologies such as Imagine and Party and DALI that actually take machine learning models, and actually by taking a sentence, a language, they can produce an image that is creative, representative. In fact, the picture on the right, this is a gift I got from my son. He wrote a prompt, a language. A father is sitting. A father plays autumn leaves on a beach with his girls. Now, autumn leaves happen to be my favorite tune to play on the piano, so this was generated by one of those large models, which I really liked. Now, there are many applications that we could actually think about for that, and of course, there are many other questions around how to use that in the right way. I'll just mention one, which I think connects it also to economic growth. So we looked into how can we help people get skills and jobs, and as part of an initiative that we have, which is called Grow with Google, we're looking to see how to help people get their skills. And it turns out that one of the bottlenecks for people to get a new job is actually just to learn how to interview, how to practice an interview. So we ask ourselves, can we use those language models in order to help people practice interview? As it turns out, by the fact that we can understand what a person is saying, compare it to what is the desired interview pattern, give feedback in a very natural way, we could actually help people do the interview. And just to quote, Lemon from Washington, D.C., who was self-employed for over 13 years and doing IT support, and this helped him to actually get a job. So this is an example, and think about all the examples that we can have for tutoring, for education, for other methods, and many more. And again, when we think about what we can do with conversational technology, I think that it's really limited only by our imagination. A few years ago, one of my passion projects was a project called Duplex, which allowed for a very natural conversation. In fact, it allows an AI system to make a call to make a restaurant reservation over the phone. And this technology, of course, during COVID, there wasn't much use for making restaurant reservations. However, it turns out that the same technology could be used in order to make calls to businesses to find out their business operations, what time they're opening, what time they're closing, whether or not they have a curbside. And by doing that, it allowed people to find out the right information right on, say, maps or search. Their businesses could actually benefit tremendously because people could actually come and purchase right in time. So, in fact, we had millions of calls over the phone that allowed billions of people, billions of views of business information be stronger and benefit from that. So that's an example for conversational technology. Now let me talk now about another technology that I'm really passionate about, which is how to unlock and remove barriers of modality and languages in our communication. Now, what may be simple for many of us, such as reading text, may be challenging to others, or sometimes we are not in a position to do. So let me give an example of how we could use a very simple technology that is advanced now enough, which takes text and read it out loud. Well, it's actually started, I must admit, when I was doing a morning run and I was asking myself, can I just listen now to all those articles that I don't have time to read, which I found it extremely useful. But it reads aloud a text in a way that when we just launched it, I met a friend who was telling me that his 6-year-old daughter was just diagnosed with dyslexia. So I suggested that he checks out this technology. And he told me a year later this changed her life. She's a top student. She doesn't miss anything. She can actually listen to any article. And it can remove also language barriers. So think about, let's play a video.
Dari G20.org, undangan untuk startup berdampak global di jaringan inovasi digital G20. Krisis global seperti pandemi, endemik.
As you may notice, the article is in English. You can just listen to it in your own language of preference. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. So think about the opportunity here that suddenly all those barriers are gone away. Actually, when I was visiting Paris just before pandemic, I saw something in French. I put my phone into that, and I was just listening to it in English. And here's another example, something that came up with an engineer on my team just a few years ago. She observed that we could use technology to help deaf people to speak over the phone. So we used technology to actually enable people to speak over the phone by just reading and writing rather than talking and listening. The other side is doing it normally. And what we see here is a blog post of somebody, a deaf person, where he had the first ever phone conversation with his son. This is really some of the opportunities that we can have. Now, in the few more minutes that I have, let me touch on the third area that is in a way perhaps as transformative as we can be, which is how to use AI to help out with healthcare. And of course, you know, with healthcare, of course, this is going to impact people's life, well-being, and in many cases, save lives. There are many ways in which you could use AI to help with health, anything from helping out the clinicians, helping with the system, helping with search. Let me touch on just a few examples. For example, just to find the critical health information, such as where is vaccination, or where are the doctors that I need, of course, that's a no-brainer. And the insight on vaccination concerns, you know, working with NGOs and government, of course, played a significant role during COVID. Now, when we think about the next revolution, it's really about the sensors, about what we're going to have on the watch, on the phone, and with those we can actually use now to even test our heart rate, you know, to get our respiratory analysis and vitals and more. Now, think about the fact that we could now use the phone to look into our skin and get, in a technology called Dermacyst, which is now under development, we could use classification of over 280 skin conditions and get us information that will help us make a decision, hopefully to see a doctor sooner rather than we will, which could actually save lives. It's not the only place where AI can help. Think about how it can help with mammography, with lung cancer, and many other areas. In every of them, and I'm sure there are some startups actually working on some of these areas as well. Here's an example for one area that we've been working for a few years. This is Santi. She has diabetes, and she's one of 400 million people around the world with diabetes who are at risk to get a condition called diabetic retinopathy. This is a condition that can be easily identified with an expert, and once identified, it's actually treatable. The problem is there's a shortage of over 100,000 eye doctors just in India alone to actually screen, and especially in the rural area. Now, by using AI, we can actually have everybody, you know, the way to analyze it is actually looking through an image of an eye. And by having a simple device that can be done in places around the world, and we already have 75,000 people around India and Thailand going through such screening, we can have an AI do the screening, help out, identify those that need to see urgently an eye doctor in order to take the treatment and save their eyesight. So these are examples about how we could actually use AI in order to help with eyesight and use machine learning in order to help out in places where we don't have enough doctors. In other cases, we can actually help out, make the work of the doctor more effective, or the healthcare system to prioritize treatment to those who need it. And perhaps I should just end here on the healthcare, identifying the opportunity to help the healthcare workers, especially in places, in rural places, where the actual interaction with the patient is done with healthcare workers. And here's the opportunity to use technology to make their work more effective, to be able to prioritize who they need to see earlier, to help out with AI to identify conditions that could be missed, and more. And again, this is just early stage of what can be done and where we can be heading. And really, I can't be more excited about the opportunity to help save lives with technology through AI and through machine learning and through technology in these systems. Now, when I consider these areas, I just touched on a sample on each of them. These are examples where AI and technology and innovation can help out save lives, improve lives, and it's something that can be done in coordination between companies, with startups, with governments. And the beauty about entrepreneurship, and that's why I'm so excited to be here, is that it's not a zero-sum game, it creates value. People can come, and one of the things that I often tell when I meet students early on, I say, you know, it's a very unique time in history because it was never the case that you could have people, young people, in so few years get into a situation that they can actually solve problems that impacts millions of people worldwide. And the beauty of taking the technologies now also empowered by cloud, empowered by API, empowered by library, and the fact that anybody can actually harness AI and machine learning and cloud and leverage it to solve societal problems, I think is unprecedented, and I can't be more excited about the opportunity. So with all of that, I can only, I'm looking forward to see the innovation and impact that is going to come up, and I think that we're just kind of in the early days of this huge momentum where we're going to see transformation with AI to the benefit of society. And with that, thank you very much. Terima kasih. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed your speeches. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Yossi Matias, and you now may return to your seat. Thank you once again, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue to our next keynote speech, which will be delivered by the head of corporate strategy at Zoom, Mr. Abis Arora. Prior to joining Zoom, Mr. Abis Arora was the Vice President of Product at Microsoft Teams. He spent over 20 years at Microsoft in senior business and product leadership roles, including those at Xbox, Bing, Windows, Office, and Surface. He has a successful track record of delivering product innovation for customers, such as the creation of Xbox Game Pass and driving step function usage and revenue growth at Bing and Xbox Live.
Mr. Arora has managed scale platform businesses with multi-sided ecosystems across diverse business models of advertising, subscriptions, transactions, licensing, and device scales. Mr. Abis Arora holds an MBA from the Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC Chapel Hill and a Master of Commerce degree from Mumbai University and is a Chartered Accountant, India. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Head of Corporate Strategy at Zoom, Mr. Abis Arora.
Selamat pagi. Good morning, good morning. It's such a special honor to be here today with Honorable Minister, distinguished delegates, excellencies, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the entire Zoom team, I extend greetings and I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for the introduction. Like was shared, I'm Abhish Arora. I head corporate strategy at Zoom, based out of the United States. I'm excited to be here addressing you in Southeast Asia's largest digital economy. And congratulations on Indonesia's chairmanship of the G20 force have experienced a significant increase in their reach from less than 1 million to over 200 million active users. Governments around the world have rolled out digital public services at unprecedented speed, laying the foundation for future digital government. Last but not the least, the workplace. The workplace has transformed. The office is no longer a physical space, but better thought of as a digital workspace. Now, there is overwhelming preference for this new way of work. In fact, according to a global Ernst & Young survey, 90% of workers, including those here in Southeast Asia, want flexibility in where and when they work, with 60% saying they would consider leaving their job, quitting, if they're not given the opportunity to work remotely and with the flexibility they would like. These are massive and profound shifts. But this is just the beginning, and I'm inspired by how Zoom is innovating to get across multiple facilities and deliver care in cases that require patient isolation. This solution could help countries scale the number of patients that can receive timely and cost-effective care. Next, imagine a patient in a remote town or village requiring critical specialist surgical care. Today, this would require a difficult and expensive travel and long wait times. By enabling remotely guided surgeries with Zoom embedded into wearable devices, a local surgeon can deliver higher quality care with expert guidance at a lower overall cost and much better patient outcomes. In education, which is my next sort of area, video conferencing has totally transformed the classroom as we all experienced, with children studying from home. Now, in the higher education sector, according to recent studies, about 2/3 of students actually prefer a hybrid learning environment to over being in school in person 100% of the time. Lakshya University in India was able to tap the potential of world-class academicians from across the world for guest lectures, semester courses, and modular sessions, widening the breadth of learning opportunities available to students. Some of our customers have anecdotally shared that students in hybrid programs have, on average, obtained better grades than students in traditional-only programs. So this is a very important data point that tells us that these changes are here to stay, and in fact, are better for society. There are new use cases emerging beyond the classroom. The first one I'm going to talk about is research. Now, research is a highly collaborative process, right, that occurs over a long period of time. Now, imagine a persistent virtual collaboration space that brings together researchers across the world, supporting both synchronous and asynchronous communications, rich collaboration tools, including both physical and virtual whiteboards, conference room tech set, etc. And all of these devices and experiences working together seamlessly. This would significantly extend the research capability across all universities. Next, let's talk about security. In many countries, student safety continues to be a major concern. How can Zoom help ensure a safer school or campus environment? Many of us are familiar with traditional emergency kiosks. Anyone on campus can pick up a phone at the kiosk and you're connected to campus security, law enforcement, or other emergency personnel. Now, with Zoom, this can be a much more dynamic visual element for greater situational awareness. Next, if you were to talk about government, in government, video has been primarily used for constituent and intra-government communications or program announcements. In May 2021, the Ministry of Communications and Informatics leveraged Zoom for its nationwide launch of the Indonesia Digital Savviness campaign. This hybrid event took place over Zoom webinars and meetings and was presided over by His Excellency President Joko Widodo. The largest event of its kind in Indonesia was amplified by live broadcasts to TV and social media channels. More than 500,000 citizens, 500,000, from all across Indonesia were able to take part at one time. This was a new record and shows how Indonesia and Zoom together can make what was thought impossible, possible. Congratulations to the Ministry of Communications and Informatics. Now, we are seeing new ways in which Zoom can help governments and civic institutions deliver public services. Courts have started to use video, not just for trials, but also for pre-trial planning. Lawyers and prosecutors can use Zoom to communicate with each other, for witness depositions, to share legal documents, and more. During hybrid trials, judges and other legal participants connect with each other, whether they are remote or in person. This streamlines the trial process, saving costs and ensuring public safety. This is happening today, or starting to happen today, I should say, in many countries, including Singapore, India, Vietnam, Australia, and many more. Speaking of public safety, emergency planning and emergency response, including search and rescue and coordination across agencies, can be significantly enhanced with Zoom's platform across chat, phone, and video. Now, there are transformational opportunities across other industries as well. In manufacturing, which is the first example that I have here, there is a big opportunity to enhance collaboration with frontline workers. Frontline workers are amongst the most underserved constituent from a tech perspective. Imagine highly specialized equipment needing repairs and requiring an expert to address. Now, instead of having an expert travel on site, a local technician using a wearable camera from RealWear, as shown here, with Zoom embedded, can help diagnose and repair the issue remotely. This saves time, reduces costs, and maximizes uptime. One oil and gas manufacturer, one of Zoom's customers, saves over $1 million per oil rig per year by using video for remote repair and virtual assist. In financial services, we are seeing an increase in video-based customer engagement, including mobile banking, video-based terminals, and more. What we see is that if people can see others, right, there is often more engagement, resulting in better transactions, more engagement, higher upsell of services for the banks, and increase in customer support levels. In insurance, there are companies using Zoom on drones for remote damage assessment, giving claim adjusters a bird's eye view of the damage, literally. And in retail, video-assisted e-commerce is starting to become more prevalent, especially in high-consideration sales situations. So if you're spending a lot of money or buying something really complex, whether it's a good or a service, a video-based experience can really allow companies to scale. This photo we have here is an example of an Australian customer, Hugh, that has increased bookings and order value after moving to a Zoom-enabled video e-commerce model. As you have seen, Zoom is at the forefront of enabling novel use cases across industries. Now, let's talk about how Zoom is continuing to invest to accelerate future digital innovation. I'll start with the Zoom platform. Now, while Zoom is known for meetings, we are now a platform. What does that mean? Zoom One, or our platform, brings together meetings, chat, phone, events, webinar, and more into a single solution. Recently, we launched Zoom Contact Center, which allows companies to manage their customer communications. We also released Zoom IQ for sales, which gives insights into sales calls using conversational intelligence and AI. As we look ahead, we continue to invest across 4 main areas. First, we are investing in flexible work to create a more inclusive and effective collaboration experience across work, home, and on the go. Some of this is achieved through our Zoom Spaces investment that includes specialized experiences for conference rooms, digital signage, and kiosks. We enable flexible hot desking. This hybrid work where people are going to come in, go from the office, requires flexible hot desking. So we're enabling that for space reservations. We've also implemented a feature called Smart Gallery, a feature that uses cutting-edge hardware and AI to create individual video feeds of in-room participants, leveling the playing field for everyone and making the experience more inclusive. Second, we're investing in continuous collaboration to provide distributed teams a sense of connectedness. One thing we hear is about fatigue, and what we're doing is to address that. Creating experiences that enhance connectedness, that improve asynchronous collaboration with our chat, with our new whiteboard, and we're automating workflows as examples here. Third, we're investing in tech that enables both immersive and engaging experiences. An example is Zoom Apps now customizes a participant's video, both the foreground and the background, making the meetings canvas a lot more immersive. Finally, we are creating a foundation for intelligent interactions that benefit everyone. Examples include offering automated transcriptions in 30 languages and live caption translation for 12 languages to help overcome language and accessibility barriers. We've recently announced the availability of Zoom meetings and webinar in Bahasa Indonesia, signifying Zoom's commitment to Indonesia. Now, let's talk about how Zoom is enabling developers and ISVs to bring innovation to Zoom and also to take Zoom into their experiences. As a developer, you can bring your experiences into our products with Zoom apps. One example I'd like to talk about and highlight is AI Note Taker by Fathom, which records, transcribes, and highlights key moments from Zoom calls, so you can focus on the conversation instead of taking notes. Fathom takes the notes for you. We also enable developers to bring Zoom into their apps. Cinemaker was able to bring in remote participants into their live video production app via the Zoom's Meeting SDK. Developers can also integrate Zoom into business workflows using our extensive library of APIs. As an example, users can join Zoom meetings directly from Notion, a collaboration app, saving time and steps. Finally, developers can use Zoom's Video SDK to build customizable video-based experiences. For example, TaskHuman, a company that enables remote coaching, improved the reliability of video within their apps by implementing the Zoom Video SDK. We're also funding innovative companies that are inspired to build the next big thing in the Zoom platform ecosystem. The Zoom Apps Fund is a $100 million global venture fund to stimulate growth of our ecosystem of Zoom apps, integrations, and hardware. Portfolio companies receive an initial investment of $250,000 to $2.5 million to build solutions that will become core to how our customers meet, communicate, and collaborate. The Zoom Apps Fund is stage agnostic, but primarily focused on seed to Series A stages. Zoom Ventures focuses on companies that are strategically aligned with our vision and that are looking for a value-based strategic partner. Zoom Ventures focuses on companies that are early stage to growth stage, typically Series B or later. I want to highlight a couple of examples from our portfolio. Theta Lake is a leader in unified communication, security, and compliance solutions. They are using our APIs to help organizations manage complex security and compliance issues across voice, video, chat, and document platforms. Wilo connects geographically distributed colleagues by allowing users to move naturally around a shared virtual workspace. Now, in the time that I've had, I have covered a lot of ground quickly, touched many industries, many use cases. There is a lot more we can talk about. I invite you all to partner with Zoom as we continue to define together what lies beyond. I look forward to engaging with all of you during the remainder of this summit to discuss how we can accelerate digital innovation in this collaboration era. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Mr. Abis Arora. And you now may be seated.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to our panel discussions, we will take a short break for 10 minutes as we invite you to be able to enjoy the coffee break refreshments that is available in this ballroom. Please enjoy, and we will see you again in a few minutes.
CBS Radio and its 217 affiliated stations present the CBS Radio Workshop, radio's distinguished series dedicated to man's imagination, the theater of the mind. Tonight, report on ESP, a study of clairvoyance, telepathy, and extrasensory perception taken from actual case records. Extrasensory perception, clairvoyance, telepathy, precognition, reason, unknown, unexplained. I believe it's more than a superstition. I believe it's extrasensory perception.
It was as real as you are, Henry. I saw him. He was stretched out here in the sitting room. He was in a metal coffin. There was a bouquet on his chest. White flowers. All white. Except for one red rose in the center. It was so vivid.
It was a case of dreaming.
Ladies and gentlemen, G20 Digital Innovation Network will resume shortly. We invite all invited guests to please kindly take a seat, and we will resume the event in just a few moments. Thank you.
Further possibility arises that telepathic messages received in the course of the day may only be dealt with during a dream or the following night.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, G20 Digital Innovation Network will resume shortly. We invite all invited guests to please kindly take a seat, and the event will resume in a few moments. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And before we begin our first panel discussion today, we would like to inform you, should you be interested in augmented reality and experiencing the technology directly, Meta Booth is the best place to visit. You can visit Meta Booth, which is located at the Westin Resort Nusa Dua Bali, as there will be some crash courses in the booth as well for you to learn more about augmented reality.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Meta has provided AR technology that showcases various cultures in Indonesia. And as part of the Digital Innovation Network, Meta in Indonesia is also inviting all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to attend and also collaborate in the launching ceremony of Meta Immersive Learning Academy program and talk show of the utilization of augmented reality or AR in the creative industry, which will start at 12:30 today, the 3rd of September. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to also inform you that this event will be attended by Dedi Permadi, the co-chair of Digital Economy Working Group or DEWG G20 2022, Samuel Abrijani Pangerapan, the Director General of Informatics Applications and Governance of the Ministry of Communication and Informatics of the Republic of Indonesia.
And also special expertise in metaverse field, Nodi Valdrino, Manager Public Policy, Indonesia dan Timor Leste Meta, Cindy Tia Ulfa, Founder Bikin Filter, and Alumni Program Metavolution. So don't miss these series of events. It will be exciting and it's going to be fun. So we will see you there. And please remember that this event is hosted by Ministry of Communication, hosted by Informatics Knowledge Partners, Alpha JWC Ventures, MDI Ventures, East Ventures.
And is sponsored by Google, Economic Research Institute, ASEAN and East Asia, Meta, Goto, Gojek Tokopedia, Association of Indonesian Internet Service Providers, and Kirti. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, we'd like to invite you to please kindly take a seat, for we will continue to our panel discussion in just a few moments.
Our first panel discussion is about perspectives on the future of tech industries from Indonesia's early unicorns. And who are our panelists, Sarah?
Yes, Ralph, we have wonderful panelists to give their insights for our wonderful discussion, for our first panel discussion. Our first panelist is Mr. Teddy Utomo, the president at Bukalapak, Mr. Albert, the co-founder of Traveloka, and also Mr. Rohit Sethi, the senior principal of Kirni.
And the moderator, Mr. Mohan Belani, co-founder and CEO of E27, Asia's largest tech media platform. Belani works closely with the management team on various areas including product, content, business development, marketing, and also customer support.
He is also a partner at Orville Ventures, a network-driven venture capital firm investing in early-stage technology startups in Southeast Asia. He has invested in over 30 early-stage funds and startups across APAC and the United States, and enjoys working with founders and helping them to alleviate the challenges of building great companies, specifically around the areas of funding and market access.
With that in mind, we would like to invite moderator and our panelists on stage.
Selamat pagi and a very good morning to everyone. Thanks for having me here. I think it's a huge privilege to be part of this. A very good morning to all the ministers, the delegates, the startup founders, the investors, and everyone that has even flown in internationally for this. It's amazing to see physical events come back in action and the recovery of the Indonesian tech ecosystem. We are joined today by a very amazing group of people, founders of companies and people that have worked with a large number of tech companies in Indonesia to help them with digital transformation. Even for my business alone, right, COVID really, affected us. We had to stop doing events and transform the entire business. And it's great to see that sometimes in uncertain and challenging situations, companies can transform themselves to be better and more sustainable for future growth. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the panelists and let them share with you a bit more about their background and the work they do. So maybe we can start with Rohit first from the far end.
Thank you, Mohan. My name is Rohit Sethi. I'm a senior principal with Carney. I have 14 years of experience in ICT, digital strategy making, as well as policy work with a lot of ministries. So we really cover regulation around digital, which is quite an important topic, and some aspects of that will be discussed today as well.
Thanks, Rohit. Albert?
Hi, my name is Albert. I'm a co-founder of Traveloka. We started 10 years ago, and now we have grown to 6 countries in Southeast Asia.
Amazing, thank you. And Teddy?
Hi, my name is Teddy Utama. So I'm the president of Bukalapak. Prior to being in this company, I was actually in Schroders and Credit Suisse. But it's been a tremendous journey to see a company that started off as an e-commerce marketplace, today has also expanded into connecting more than 14 million mom and pop kiosks across Indonesia.
Nice. So we've seen really amazing growth from Bukalapak and Traveloka in the last decade, right? Let's take a step back and look back at what happened in March 2020. So clearly there was, when the pandemic hit all of us, right? What was the state of the company at that point in time, right? We'll start with you, Teddy, right? How was the internal situation? How was management assessing this? What was the mindset of the employees? And how did you all get into action, right, to kind of prepare for the situation?
We were actually very lucky, if I can put it that way. So while we started 2010 as an e-commerce marketplace, by 2017, we have started to expand into mom and pop kiosks because we realized that while technology adoption is quite good in this country, a lot of people does not have credit cards. So that's why we went into connecting to the mom and pop kiosks, initially just to allow for mass market to practically pay their purchase using cash. But that kind of grows into a stage where we also help them to practically fulfillment of their FMCG, help them to expand their business to include from remittance to topping up phone credits, to pay for electricity bill, tax, I mean the whole suite of them. Now, the reason why I went there first is because we were concerned in March, I was concerned in March 2020, because while we are a technology company, more than half of our business are actually offline mom and pop kiosks. So there was a big risk to it.
Yeah.
But it was quite interesting that because of the pandemic, most Indonesian, because of the lockdown and all that, they don't want to travel too far. So they're starting to visit the community store, the guy next door, the guy across the street. And they realized that this mom and pop kiosks, which in their mind were only selling like mineral water and instant noodle, suddenly now they can buy a game voucher there, they can pay for their tax there, they can send their money to their mom in the village. And we saw this mom and pop kiosks, practically their revenue went up like 2-3x.
Wow.
So it was quite a, I guess, a blessed kind of situation. And as a company, we were, again, not because we have foresight, we were lucky. At the end of 2018, the board decided that we should embark into path of profitability. So this is before WeWork and tobacco and all that. So it was quite rare. But as a result of that, going into 2020, we were already a lot leaner. We were already a lot more efficient. We didn't actually have to restructure our workforce. We were already practically by will or by luck, prepared for essentially the time of the pandemic. So, unfortunately, it probably means that our example may not be a general one that can be copied by a lot of the other tech players.
So this is interesting, right? On some level, the company had already had some level of preparation for a dire environment, and that was through expansion into mom and pop shops, but also like embarking on this path of profitability. And in some ways, that actually worked out, really well for you, and you all were able to ride out that wave. Albert, did Traveloka have a similar experience? How was the situation for you all back in March 2020? And similarly, right, what did the company do? What was the state of the organization, and how did you all react to the entire thing?
Yes, we actually see changes in consumer behaviors, and we definitely try to adapt to anticipate the change. For example, we work with government of Indonesia to create a vaccination center to ensure that people who's traveling get vaccinated. And we also work with airports to create vaccination center, as well as working with international government to create awareness of safety and health protocol when they're traveling as well. I think we also work with partners, local partners, like for example, accommodations, hospitalities, industry, to create suitable program for our users during the COVID pandemic situation. So what we are looking for is to find out a way to create and ensure people can travel safely, healthily, and that's essentially what we are looking for.
So in a way, a lot of your efforts were on stakeholder management. You all had to work with your partners, your governments, your policymakers a lot more aggressively to at least convince them that the entire travel experience could continue to be safe and sustainable. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So Rohit, you work with companies in many different industries, right? On a macro view, right, how were you seeing companies and even sectors react to this? Because clearly, for some of them, there were massive opportunities. But for others, right, there were either significant changes to their business operations or even complete shutdowns of the business altogether, right? So give us a macro view of what you were seeing back in March and April 2020.
Right. I think the response to COVID, right, overall, I would say it's a three-stage response, right? The first stage was react, where it's a crisis, it's a health crisis, it's a financial crisis, we need to save the SMEs, we need to save the daily workers, wage earners, and so on. The second response would be recovery, where I would say now the companies and the countries are in that stage where the GDP projections and the revenue projections are coming almost back to pre-COVID levels. Still not for many countries, but getting there. And the third phase, I would say, would be rebuild, where I think technology acceleration has happened a lot, and there are further steps which will be taken in the time to come. So I think the react stage is over. Most countries handled it well. Now we are in the recovery stage, still quite optimistic, although there are recessionary concerns and so on. And then I think rebuild, the path is quite clear, especially for digital. And that's where forums like these are super important to bring the stakeholders together, right? On the industries, I think the first thing that happened was healthcare was exposed, right? So we saw that most countries were not ready for that level of epidemic, right? So I think some other sectors suffered as well, like logistics, supply chains. We saw how dependent we were on other countries, right? In general, that was the case for most countries. A lot of sectors, tourism, hospitality, were completely, there was no incoming revenue coming, right? So I think COVID, in a way, brought to light many things about various sectors, right? EdTech had to completely, education had to transform, right? Before COVID, people were talking about technology being in the classroom, and then after COVID, technology became the classroom, right? So a lot of things are changing, evolving, and I think we'll discuss with the panelists also how in the future, right, technology is seen more and more valuable to the industries.
Yeah. So you talked about all the sectors evolving, and I wanted to dive in deeper, right, specifically for the travel sector and to some level marketplaces, right? How has the travel sector now evolved, and how are they looking forward over the next two to 3 years, at least from a recovery standpoint? And this is more for Albert.
For me?
Yep, for the travel sector.
Sorry, can you ask the question?
How's the travel sector like evolving, and how is it going to be like? Like, what are the new evolutions for it in the recovery phase, right? To get back to where we were at a normal level pre-pandemic over the next few years.
Yes, as I said earlier, right, the COVID has changed customer behavior, specifically in these three areas that they're looking for. So they are looking for more affordable pricing. They are looking for more flexibility and the awareness of safety protocol. And I said, right, when we work with international governments to provide health and safety protocol awareness, or even we even go further to provide COVID testing, booking in our platforms, as well as I think most importantly is to collaborate and work with local partners to be able to provide a good program that is flexible. For example, we create a more flexible reschedule refund program in our platform to cater all these such demand in refund and stuff. So all in all, I think it's important for us to look at it end to end, so that we can be resilient and build a more sustainable business model moving forward.
And Teddy, what about the marketplace model, the marketplace businesses, the mom and pop side, right? How is the recovery going to come back to pre-COVID levels, and like where is the future for those kind of businesses in the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, I think the traditional convenience store today has been a lot more stronger through technology, right? Through the fulfillment, they are now comparables to some extent with the modern retailer. The amount of goods, the amount of services are now comparable. So it really kind of gave the chance to the traditional convenience store to be in a level playing field with the modern retailer. But I think for the whole sector per se, for technology, I mean, let's address the elephant in the room, right? At the end of the day, coming out of COVID condition, it also means that monetary policy will be different. It also means that, you know, we're back to normal. Now, can't help, you know, thinking or seeing the development in the future. It's less so about domination. It's now about how can online and offline kind of work together in collaboration. In the past, you always have online to offline or offline to online. None of them works, or very difficult to do, because the background of an online company and offline company are so different. Now you're attacking into an area that is not your expertise. So more and more now, we start to see how online and offline are joining hands, collaborating in partnership to come up with a solution. And more, we kind of see that the technology innovation is becoming more important, and not just as a lip service. I think particularly in Indonesia, I felt that everybody keeps saying, you know, very often in the past, people say, Indonesia is so lucky. You can just look at what works in developed market and copy it. But the problem is, if everybody copy from the developed market, you ended up with the same product. If you ended up with the same product, you ended up competing using capital. Now we're starting to see how people are looking for innovation that is differentiated, not just dominating for traffic. How can we focus value add on a particular niche segment that becomes sticky without deploying excessive capital? So I think we are moving into a very interesting stage in the next couple of years.
It's interesting you mentioned about online and offline, Because traditionally, it was always about online disrupting offline businesses and maybe even making them obsolete, right? But what we've learned over the years, and Bukalapak has also demonstrated that really well, that it's really a merger of the two models and a balance between both, right, as opposed to a one versus the other. So, Minister earlier mentioned about the amazing number of unicorns. You know, both of you have gotten to that level and done really well. What do you think Indonesia has gotten right, like in the last 5 years, right? How has the Indonesian ecosystem, right, both on the investor side, the government side, and even the companies, done to foster such an amazing culture of innovation and startup ecosystem? And how can Indonesia continue to remain relevant, right? So maybe Rohit, you can take that on a macro level across the different industries, and I would love to hear Albert talk a bit more for travel and your side on the SMEs.
Right, sure. So I think Indonesia has seen a lot of progress, right, in the past few years along digital. Jakarta is the third largest startup ecosystem now in the emerging economies, and will only grow stronger going forward. I think there's a lot of momentum now. There are still sectors which don't have a unicorn as of now, so EdTech, health tech. If you look at more sophisticated startup ecosystems like India, for example, India has more than 100 unicorns spread out more evenly, right? So we have EdTech, health tech, gaming, D2C models. So I think there is a lot of potential in Indonesia going forward to have startups, unicorns in those spaces.
Nice. Albert, with respect to travel, right, what has the government, what has the Indonesian ecosystem done really right and really well to foster like a great ecosystem for travel companies?
Sorry for my delay, because I hear a lot of echo. I don't have a very good hearing, so there's a lot of echo. Sorry if I miss your question.
No problem.
From what we can see is definitely the adoption of digital. People are more open to adopting digital technology in their life. Definitely, when we see, for example, on the financial inclusivity sector, we see a trend of adoptions. For example, our buy now pay later program, people are adopting more of it. In fact, we see a lot high increase in demand during the pandemic, as well as there's more awareness regarding to sustainable tourism, where when internally we look at when we ask our users, they tell us that almost 80% of the time they are aware of this program about being sustainable, how we travel. I think that is a very interesting sector that we are eager to look into it and see how we can innovate based on consumer needs. Yeah.
Teddy?
So I was in an event about 2 weeks ago, and apparently there was cited that there's X number of entrepreneurs in Indonesia, which is quite small. But in reality, if you think about the fact that there are 64 million MSME in this country, I think naturally the spirit of Indonesian are very entrepreneurship. And when this country suddenly see the digital adoption that we have seen in the last few years, that created that pull factor from the entrepreneurs to come up with idea for a tech company, right? I think most people keep asking, how can you get majority of Indonesian to adopt technology? And I always smile and always said, just look at how many users in Indonesia that use WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Wake up, guys. Indonesians are already in technological realm. Now, that sparked that entrepreneurship of Indonesian to start thinking, hang on, how can we add that value? How can we make people switching or adding the usage from social media technology for business? And if you see a lot of the tech company here, they're spearheaded by Indonesian, which understand the culture, which understand the behavior. And that's why I was mentioning about how we can learn from developed market, which is great, but don't just blindly copy. Because what you notice here, I think in Indonesia, is looking at the business model from developed market, bringing that into Indonesia, but tweak it so that it becomes suitable and usable by mass market Indonesian. The moment you did that, with a population of 270 million people, I mean, you're bound to have a lot of unicorn.
Absolutely. So a large part of the recovery process is also in people, right? Whether is it getting them to adopt technology more, which you've rightfully pointed out they already significantly do, but now there's the opportunity to reach people in the larger tier cities and the outskirts, right? But the other area is also with respect to talent, right? A large part of the recovery is in ensuring that there are enough talented people to support a larger startup ecosystem, build new companies, and even, like what Rohit pointed out, right, build unicorns in other those areas. Where do you think that opportunity is in terms of talent development, right? What can be done by organizations or educational institutions or even governments, right, to support and foster a entrepreneurship mindset and technology mindset talent ecosystem for Indonesia?
So I think outside the box. You know, not many people probably realize, but our tech security team is sitting out of Singapore. Our CTO and R&D hub is actually sitting out of Sydney and Melbourne. We do have partnership in Korea, so I guess we got a couple countries out of the G20 as it is, right? Because what we realize is Indonesian, because of the demographic dividend, it has massive pool of young talent, but they're young. They don't have experience. So as a company, what we did is we hunt out the experienced people, leave them be in their respective country, as the previous presentation shows. You can work anywhere in the world now. But the purpose is, how can you get the top talent of the world starting to impart some of that knowledge, starting to train this younger generation of Indonesian so that in the next 3-5 years, they are as experienced. Because I think the shortage of talent in Indonesia are the one that has a more senior kind of like technology experience. On the younger generation, I think Indonesia is ripe for it. If we can train this massive pool, I think we're in a very, very good spot for the future.
Nice. Albert, do you have a view on the talent ecosystem for Indonesia and how we can better develop that to support all the future unicorns?
Yes. I think the talent, when it comes to talents, we have to look at the whole ecosystems because tech doesn't stand alone. We always look for collaborative with non-government institutes such as universities and educational institutes. Also, as well as government. I think government play a very important part when it comes to making sure that that we have a stream flow of talents that can support the industry. For now, we are seeing, looking forward, if we want to have a more sustainable way of building the industry, I think we have to work together and collaborate with partners and local institutions.
And Rohit, what are you seeing, right, on a macro level across all the different industries, right? How are talent challenges being handled, and what are the opportunities for talent development across the different sectors?
Right. I think, so there is quite a talent shortage, right, or war, as they say right now, because it's a limited talent pool. If you see ICT/digital professionals as a percentage of overall workforce, right, it's quite limited in many countries, Indonesia specifically. So I think there is already a strong awareness in Indonesia that this is one area which needs to be developed. We have the demographic dividend here. For the next 20-25 years, we have young people to train and bring into the workforce as ICT/digital professionals. Zooming out, I think this is a problem across different countries as well. We see more and more countries coming up with special visas to bring in even expats, right, with the right skill set of digital ICT to come in and quickly set up their or accelerate their digital ecosystems. So I think very relevant problem. Everybody is facing it. Of course, the gentlemen here face it day in, day out in their companies. But I think it takes time, right? It takes 5, 10, 15, 20 years to really start having the right policies in place, training people right from probably early ages with ICT skills, having the right matrices, and then over time keeping them in lifelong learning to be able to have that population which can not just consume ICT, but also produce ICT and export it out of the country.
Yeah, and definitely the big thing that was pointed out by one of the keynote speakers earlier is also this cultural shift to hybrid work environments, right? And the need to be more flexible to allow people to work from home. So basically a global mindset shift around how people actually work. The big elephant in the room is, of course, the upcoming recession or pending recession, right? Economies are opening up, we are on the road to recovery, but we are also facing global energy crisis, food crisis. In your views, right, do you all think a massive recession is going to come to Indonesia? How will that affect the overall tech ecosystem? And more specifically also for your own companies, right? How are you all actually thinking about that problem and dealing with it? So whoever would like to go first.
Okay. Well, I used to be an economist. I'm not anymore, so let's not predict whether recession will happen or not, right? But I think it's the fiduciary duty of every management first to make sure that you run the company as efficiently as possible. I think that has been in the mindset for us since late 2018. So we started a lot earlier, I think, compared to the others, right? And second also is for us, together with that path to profitability mindset, we always ask the question whenever we roll out a product, whenever we roll out a new feature, a new subsidiaries, how can we bring it into profitable in a finite period? Gone has the day that you roll out a business with infinite amount of subsidy to keep it going. It needs to have a proper economic sense. Sure, in the first 3-6 months you roll it out, you will promote it, you'll spend a bit more, right? But it cannot go on forever because it doesn't make sense. Now, that means that you can't just copy. It means you can't just disrupt by irrational amount of subsidy. It needs to be a real value so people use the platform with the proper reason. But I think for us, again, we are lucky. We're very blessed and lucky. We actually did our IPO in 2021, $1.5 billion worth. So we now actually have over 25 years of runway. We don't plan it to be 25 years. We plan it to be infinite by means that we should not be running out of the money because we should turn profitable way before that. Yep. But I think that becomes a lot more important now. I'm starting to see investors no longer asking, what is your GMV growth? We need it to be 300%. A lot of the question is, how can you have a sustainable growth with a proper economic variables built into your projections?
Right. No, that makes sense. I think the sustainable growth part, which is something the entire tech world is trying to shift their mindset towards, right, is probably going to be a huge trend moving forward. Albert, in your view, with respect to potentially a pending recession and a lot of the global crisis, right, how is Traveloka thinking about the problem? How are you all navigating the issue? And what are you all doing to be in a better position to handle it if it does happen?
I think the key is we always look at understanding the users, making sure that our innovations and collaborations is always aligned to what user needs. Always looking back at our business model, make sure that we cater what the needs of user and as well as the need of our business partners, and that's how we build a more resilience. And even during the pandemic, we always innovate and rethink about our product and solutions. I think those are the key components that we need to make sure that we can have a sustainable business moving forward.
Rohit, what are you seeing across multiple industries, right? Because the way logistics, the industry or the healthcare industry handles the situation is completely different and varied, right? So are there common patterns that you're seeing? Are there massively differing opinions and viewpoints to this problem? Would love to hear your view.
Right. I think some industries were more exposed, right? As we discussed in the beginning. So COVID happened and the level of readiness to handle was quite different across industries, right? And then what was realized in the recovery phase, I think there's already that realization is there, right? So even at the national country level, there is a larger theme of being self-sufficient in energy, in technology, in manufacturing. So I think those themes have already kick-started. So some sectors are already working differently from the way they used to work before. So I think these themes will continue. For the unicorns, resilience, I think, is already now a part of the mindset, right? Before COVID, not so much, but I think after that, everything, I'm sure what is being done on a day-to-day basis is already keeping that into mind, that we ensure that when we expand, the model keeps becoming more and more resilient.
So we probably have time for a few more questions, and I want to look at some of the more forward-thinking and futuristic areas, right? So let's look at investments. What areas of investments is Bukalapak and subsequently Traveloka looking at? Whether is it new technologies, whether is it new markets, new verticals? We would love to think of you. I would love to hear from you. What is your viewpoint on future investments that you all are thinking about?
From our side is we would invest on a company that we are not very good at doing, right? So for example, we co-invest in a digital bank because we're not a bankers. We co-invest on the JV for the online retail. This is for grocery and stuff because we don't know how to effectively operate an offline retail. So on those, then we need to admit that we are not good at everything. Whatever we are not good at, there are always somebody else out there who has been doing it for like multiple decades. They have all the experience. So it's about taking our ego down and say, you're good at it, I'm not. I'm good at what you're not. Let's collaborate together. Let's put on a JV or investment together. But those are for the bigger scale. Now, what we have done a lot also is to kind of do investment in a very small scale. So it becomes product acceleration. I think very often as a tech company, we think we have to build everything ourselves from scratch, only to find that there's a blank spot for whatever reason. We don't have that license, expertise, technology. Now, for those, we do a lot of investment just so that we can speed up the product rollout. But more and more I notice where the technology is going forward is, as I said before, it's now a challenge of real innovation. It's a challenge of not just going in and dominate. It's a challenge of how can you solve a problem on a particular segment and dominate it, right? In the sense of value add rather than on traffic. So for example, last year we started rolling out some of those niche market for some of the virtual product, financial service, gaming and all that. Now, it takes a lot of work because you can't just go in and do a subsidy. You need to really being able to improve your, for example, supply chain so that the goods you're offering is cheaper. Not because you subsidize, but because you're more efficient in the supply chain. Now, that is 10 times harder than coming in and just subsidize things. But I think this is where the directions of the global are currently heading into.
Interesting. So, Albert, on your end, like investments in the, whether is it internally, right, in the organization in terms of making it better, or externally in new sectors or new verticals, right? How is Traveloka thinking about this?
So yeah, Traveloka, we look at ourselves as more of a technology company, and we always look at how we can add value to the ecosystems by providing good technology in order to enable the ecosystems. And we realize that we cannot work alone. We are too small in order to be able to impact the ecosystem as a whole. So the way we look at it is we always want to partners and seek opportunities whenever we feel like this is something that we can work on it together, and this is something that we can add value technologically. We always look for collaborations and way to innovate together.
So to push that further, right, has there been any new areas that you all have done in the last few months, or are there any upcoming areas that you all are specifically looking for in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yes, like for example, we work with local banks, right? For example, we work with local banks to provide our technology service, our analysis, and be able to help them touch this market that could otherwise not able to be touched because of the technology that we have. That's how we can see ourselves moving forward. Right.
And Rohit, on a macro view, right, like where are organizations investing in, right? Like what aspect of digital transformation are they, putting their investments in?
Right. So I think from the unicorn perspective, what we observe, right? A lot of unicorns have this profitability challenge, right? Still, so they are constantly investing into adjacent areas or even unrelated areas to enhance the unit economics in a way of their core model, right? Or add new revenue streams which bring higher margin profitability. I think most unicorns now, because some get made very quickly, right? Like again, quoting from India, 50% of the unicorns in India took 5 years, less than 5 years from inception to being a unicorn, right? Which is quite fast. So I think what is a challenge for them, and I think they've already started realizing this, is to start investing in a way that they go from being a unicorn to being an equitable and a sustainable brand for the future, right? Because most of these brands are still not commonplace brands. I mean, most people still don't know them, right? So I think the future is really sustainability because the trajectory is quite sharp. So how we build long-term sustainable businesses which will not just survive but thrive 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right?
So on that theme, right, just to push it further, Rohit, right, do you see more consolidation in the Indonesian tech ecosystem? Do you see more M&As happening? Sometimes it might even make more sense for companies to merge together, to consolidate and manage resources a bit more effectively. And even in current situations, right, if companies want to scale and grow faster, maybe consolidation or M&A it might be the right way forward. Do you see that happening a lot more for Indonesia?
So Indonesia already saw one example, right? We had Gojek and Tokopedia. I think as a general model, it can work even in other places wherever the models are synergistic, right? And help the unit economics. As I said, still many unicorns are suffering from the profitability challenge, right? The focus was largely on scale, but now I think the profitability focus is coming again. Also, if they want to access the financial markets through IPOs and so on, the profitability starts to become more important metric.
And then Albert, like to specifically focus on travel, right? Do you see more consolidation in the travel sector? Is Traveloka looking at potentially acquiring through to grow versus just purely building on your own? How do you view M&A and consolidation for Indonesian tech ecosystem?
The way we see that is at the end of the day, we look at what is the strategy when it comes to M&A and or even collaborations, right? At the end of the day, it has to make business sense. Like, what is the advantage and disadvantage of collaborating or working together or even M&A, right? For example, we always look at the way how travel can be synergized. When it comes to travel, there's a very interesting story that when we listen to consumer, what they tell us is that we notice the behavior of booking very close to the date when they travel. And usually when it comes to booking for travel, price ticket is always more expensive closer to the date of travel. And as well as hotel and other activities as well. So the way we look at it and how we can actually solve our customer problems, help them be able to plan early so that they can get a cheaper price and they can arrange their schedule more easily. So that's why we look at it and how we can collaborate with local banks to provide programs such as buy now, pay later so that they can book their flight tickets or hotels earlier. So all in all, it has to synergize and how we strategize so that it can benefit our consumer and our business partner as well.
And Teddy, do you have a view on M&A and consolidation in your sector?
The word M&A and consolidation always sounds very scary, hey? I think it will come from the fact there's a need for collaboration, either that be in the form of commercial collaboration, or does it lead into JV, M&A, consolidation? That's just the outcome of it. But I think the key is on the collaboration. And it may happen in a less conventional way. So I think a lot of people are more thinking about consolidation on the known names, but I think what will happen is some of the more vertical basis consolidation. But one thing is always clear in my mind today. I think 5-10 years ago, tech is the challenger, tech is the disruptor against the offline business that are seen as the institution. Today, the tech companies, we are the institution, so things will have to change.
That's a very good way to end the panel. Tech is the institution and things will have to change. And the fact that we are in a tech-centric conference and a tech-centric ecosystem, I think it's a very positive thing for Indonesia, right? And all of us playing the sector. Please join me in putting your hands together to thank the panelists for the discussion. Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, may I have a round of applause for our panelists and also Mr. Mohan Belani. And we like to request to stay on stage to our moderator and also panelists. For next, we'd like to invite our documentation team and also all of our media to please take a picture. And now we'll count down from 3 in 3, 2, 1. Once again, we'd like to invite to prepare yourselves to take a picture. It seems that everyone is moving forward into front of the stage. Ready? For all cameras ready? In 3, 2, 1. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, our panelists, and also Mr. Mohan Belani. Thank you, gentlemen. You may now return to your seats. And ladies and gentlemen, our next agenda is the second panel discussion entitled A Shift Towards Sustainability, Advancing Sustainable Investment in the Post-Pandemic Era. And we will continue once again, ladies and gentlemen, with our second panel discussion. Therefore, we kindly invite you to once again, please kindly take your seat, for we will begin our second panel discussion entitled A Shift Towards Sustainability, Advancing Sustainable Investment in the Post-Pandemic Era. And we will continue with our panelists, Mr. Eduardo Colefeccio, the Managing Director of Oppenheimer Generation Asia, Mr. Marcus Brach, the Vice President, Equity Asia of DEWG, and Temasek Trust, TBC.
And also our moderator, Ms. Apina Sugiarto, partner of East Ventures. She has over 12 years of experience in investing across alternative assets, including venture capital, private equity, private credit, and special situations across industries from technology, property, logistics, and natural resources to consumers and financial services. Prior to joining East Ventures, Avina was a senior vice president at Indies Capital Partners. She was responsible for deal sourcing, analysis, execution, and fundraising across Indies investment products. She was also a vital member of the investment partnership with Verde Partners, a $15 billion global alternative asset manager headquartered in the United States.
Having a passion for empowering underdeveloped communities through promoting financial literacy, Afina has had involvement in various formal and informal women networks in the financial services industry in Indonesia and Singapore, including, ladies and gentlemen, 100 Women in Finance, Endeavor, Woman Works, and She Loves Tech. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our moderator and also our panelists onto the stage.
Thank you, Mas Raffi and Basara. Welcome, everyone, to our second panel of the day, where we will discuss about a shift towards sustainability, advancing sustainable investment in the post-pandemic era. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us a valuable lesson for the world and global leaders to encourage inclusive and sustainable living for the society and environment. Such a huge goal would only be achievable through fostering collaboration between the public and private innovation players, startups, I see so many here, corporates, and investors, to build lasting partnerships among the global innovation players. From the investment angle, fund managers and asset owners globally have taken further steps to integrate environmental, social, and governance, or ESG metrics, and putting more attention to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So we are very fortunate to have three expert panelists who will share insights and perspectives on the different environments, regulatory landscapes, challenges, and opportunities in advancing the sustainable investments. Without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panelists. Marcus Bragg, the Vice President covering Equity Asia at DEWG, one of the largest European development financial institutions dedicating long-term funding with the goal of promoting the private sector as the engine for sustainable growth. He has over 22 years of experience in investments across various sectors in many developing and transitioning countries in Asia and Africa, and has joined us all the way from Germany. Welcome, Marcus. Our next panelist, Eduardo Coleficio, the Managing Director at Oppenheimer Generations Asia, one of the largest single-family office from South Africa that has strong commitment for being the catalyst for sustainable development, and to quote, to leave the world a better place than when we find it. Very inspiring. Eduardo has a very rich experience, starting his career at the World Bank and United Nations, to becoming the Chief Operating Officer at Oppenheimer Partners, and establishing the family office operations across South Africa, UK, Jersey, and today in Asia. Welcome, Eduardo. Last but not least, we have Sherwin Poo, who is the head of Asian Development Bank, or ADB Ventures. ADB has a long history in Asia Pacific and is committed to achieving prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific. Sherwin has over 20 years of investment banking, private equity, and structured financing experience, and has led dozens of landmark equity and debt finances covering a wide range of sectors, including renewable energy, sustainable transports, environmental protection, healthcare, agriculture, and logistics. He has served at ADB for more than 15 years and has a wide pan-Asia Pacific experience. Welcome, Sherwin. I think I'll start my question to you. ADB Ventures was more recently established in 2020 during the pandemic as ADB's impact technology platform. Can you provide a bit of background for the goals of the establishment?
Sure. First, thank you very much for inviting me here. And I think the event is excellent and really honored to be here. First, let me to give a small introduction about ADB. As you know that ADB is the largest multilateral development bank in the region, and we have 68 shareholders, all governments, and Indonesia is the 6th largest shareholder of ADB, and also is one of the largest sovereign and the private sector borrower countries among our developing member countries. And to talk about ADB Ventures, it was established in 2020 after ADB identified the gaps in the market and also the gaps in ADB's operations. As you know that in the past, for development agencies, we tend to support the technology adoption, but it's not really try to support the technology development. And we wait for the technology to be matured, then adopt in the large infrastructure or manufacturing projects. But as the previous panel mentioned that it's really a technology mainstreaming century. To a certain extent, we would like to see that for the development agencies can support some of the technology to be fast-tracked, to be accelerating in the market. So after identifying that gap, we look into several sectors and realize that some sectors may need a very long time to get commercialized or to get scaled up. Then we focus on these sectors, try to promote the sustainable technologies. So overall, we see that the development agencies do have a role to play in the venture capital investment space, and particularly for those technologies that are very difficult to scale up or take a long time to scale up. So I will stop here.
Right. Maybe I'll ask a follow-up question for that. When it comes to integration of business and ESG practices, what are the key strategies to ensure the company's impacts can be sustainable and enduring?
Actually, this is the I would say that about how we, how ADB Ventures, from our perspective, look at the development goals we set in advance. And for example, ADB Ventures, we really focus on the climate change. So for example, in Indonesia, we really focus on the climate impact technologies. And either to carry some, I would say that climate mitigation impact or the climate resilience and adaptation impact. So these are our main focus in Indonesia, and also in the region. In terms of the sectors, we try to focus on clean tech, agri-tech, inclusive fintech, and health tech.
All right, thank you. Marcus, let me go to you. Can you share about DEWG's investment strategies and how wide investments and countries coverage DEWG has made?
Yeah, thank you, Avina. So DEWG is the German Development Finance Institution. We are based in Cologne and have 14 offices worldwide. And our mandate is to invest into emerging markets only. So our investments or our committed capital is about $9 billion US, and that is spread over the biggest geographies are Asia and Latin America, but also Africa and Eastern Europe. We are sector agnostic, but we cluster our sectors into banking, industries and services, of which private equity and venture is part of, as well as infrastructure and energy. So our motto is we want to promote private entrepreneurship in emerging markets. And how do we do that? We provide long-term capital to our investees. So 2/3 of our business is long-term lending, and 1/3 of our business is what we call risk capital. We invest from our own balance sheet, so we are not a fund of funds. We have an evergreen pool of funds, and that has always helped us to weather through these storms. So the last one was a pandemic, and it's good to have also long-term refinance. And we are often asked, we as DFI, what matters more to us? Is it the return aspect, or is it the developmental impact angle? And to be honest, both goes hand in hand quite well. And I would even say that both are mutually dependent on each other. So on the one side, profitability is the driver for development and impact. And on the other one, if an entrepreneur wants to survive long term, that would be difficult without taking ESG criteria into consideration.
As a development financial institution, and we at East Ventures are tremendously honored to be working with you and receiving world-class guidance and support in the past year. Can you share with us the framework that DEWG uses for ESG and impact measurement?
Yes, happy to do so. So as I said, impact is one of our strategic goals, and consequently, we also need to measure impact. So for two reasons. The one reason is only what gets measured gets done. And the second reason is that we see the opportunities for us to invest is far higher than our ability to invest. So we have to prioritize our investments. And in addition to return aspects, we also try to categorize and to do a kind of rating in terms of impact. So we ourselves are measuring the impact of all of our investments, be it direct investments or be it investments into private equity funds. And for this, we have developed the so-called development effectiveness rating, which is abbreviated DERA. So DERA is a tool which we have developed to measure impact, and it is structured in 5 categories. The first category, which actually is relevant for each and every company, and that is the creation of decent jobs. And it's not only about the number of jobs which are existing, the number of jobs which are created, it's also about the quality of jobs. So, does a company has an HR policy? Does it respect human rights? Does a company pay at least minimum wages or adhere to even more international working and labor standards? The second one is also relevant for each company, and that is local income. So we measure local income, and that is an aggregation of salaries, of course, that is profit, that is tax income, and that is also coming from local sourcing. So we love to see companies who source locally, and if a company sources locally, then it gets a higher score in our impact rating. The third category is market and sector development, and this is in particular interesting for all of our tech and startup companies. So I think the startup and tech companies, they have created markets which have never existed before, in particular for people with low income. And that is, they're usually scoring very high in our rating system. And then number 4 is environmental stewardship. That is at least interesting for companies to consider how can I contribute to energy saving, for example, and other things. And in particular, clean tech companies, renewable energy companies, they usually score high in this segment. And last but not least, what we also measure is community benefits. So how, to which extent is the community around the businesses affected or even benefiting? So is a company taking care of pollution, of noise, or are there even any CSR activities to promote schools, hospitals, and so on and so forth? So all this is added up together, and then we have a scorecard. The maximum is 150 points a company can get. But that is, since this is a multi-dimensional approach, it's impossible to get to the full 150 points. but each and every investment is categorized according to this rating tool.
Wow, great. Very complete list from job creation up to community development. Thanks, Marcus, for sharing. Going to Eduardo, share with us Oppenheimer's approach in venture capital and startup investment.
Yeah, sure. I think by way of context, I represent a multi-generational single-family office from South Africa, as you said earlier. So 120 odd years of operating as an operating family business, essentially. So more recently, we've transitioned to the family office world, and we have operations Johannesburg, London, and now Singapore. Out of Singapore, we look at exclusively VC and early growth funds and direct co-investments, and it's been a really exciting journey. The philosophy, though, that the family adopt is the same across the board. So it's all about building meaningful partnerships to unlock shared and sustainable value with our partners. So every investment that we do actually goes through a financial lens and then call it a partnership or relationship lens to say, do we want this long-term relationship, and also how can we add value for the long term for them? And so we call this engaged capital. Engaged capital has three main pillars. One is around patience, so long-term horizon. One is around risk tolerance, so tied to the long-term horizon, the ability to take on a little bit more risk because of that runway that you have. And then skin in the game. So you want the partnership to be meaningful. It means that you have to be present, but you also have to be able to put in meaningful capital to make the relationship work. So that's how we look at everything. And so for that reason, when we work with founders, we tend to be the voice nudging them to say, okay, maybe don't take the short-term, this short-term opportunity if it doesn't have, if it's not sustainable, but maybe think about the long-term game. Think about what decisions you could be making today to have a long-term business that will outlive you, that will become sustainable in the long run, that we can support over time. So it's kind of like entering into a marriage. Instead of a one-night stand, you kind of go in and you say, okay, we're going to ride this out with you. We know that things aren't perfect, but we're going on a journey together in sickness and in health, and basically say, build that future together. That's kind of how we like to think about it.
Nice, nice. Well, we at East Ventures, and I'm sure a lot of our startups are very, very fortunate to be your partners in this journey. In your view, in terms of implementation of ESG and impact and balancing the profit aspect, people and planet, how do you see is the importance of that in the context of venture capital and startups? And how do you see this implementation have differed across the regions?
So I think, yeah, a lot to unpack there. I think it's definitely critical as a factor, and it goes back to sustainability and how you build a long-term business, right? But I do think there's, in the way that we often frame the question, it presupposes that it has to be a trade-off between profit and sustainability, and we just don't think there has to be. If you have the right frameworks, the right incentives, the right horizon, we think you can balance both. The family's history goes back to, as I said, to early 1900s, and they've always felt that they want to make profit, of course, but in such a way that benefits the communities and people around them. So that's all around this long-term contribution. And in that same vein, we look at it in ESG as well. I think in terms of startups and how they look at it, I think there is a risk. I mean, there's a lot of greenwashing happening everywhere right now, and everyone feels, okay, I have to tick that box in order to be investable. And actually, we would tend to say to people, look, this is really important, you need to be thinking these terms, but focus. I mean, founders are super busy, right? They have a business to build, they have people to hire, they have problems to solve all the time, right? So better focus your efforts right now on day one to build an amazing long-term business. I mean, I think the panel earlier talked about infinite, being there forever, right? So focus on building a great business, focus on building a great team, thinking about the right thing. Be honest about where your shortcomings might be, and over time, as the company scales, you start to address those. And if you have that sustainable business model, then actually the ESG piece follows quite logically. Just as if you're going to be somewhere forever, you're not going to pollute the groundwater, you're going to be training up your people, you're going to be creating good jobs and meaningful jobs over time. And we encourage people to think in those terms.
Yes, absolutely. I think all our panelists agree that ESG, sustainability are definitely in line in business and profit directions. So Sherwin, going back to you, there has been an increased discussion and focus in ESG in the past years, not only in the public, but also in the private sector. From your point of view, what are the drivers to this, and are there any external factors, such as major policy changes at the global level, that drive this?
Yeah, actually, it's a very good question. Based on what we have observed, we believe that this is a mix of factors, and it includes some significant enhancement of I would say that private sector, public sector awareness on certain sustainable problems. And also it includes the knowledge strengthening of how we can deal with these problems. Of course, as you allude to, that there are some, I would say that joint efforts of public sector and private sector from the policymakers, from I would say that the international policy makers. So actually, if you look at SDG, this concept, it's very new. Actually, the SDG was formalized only in 2015. And at the same time, the framework of impact monitoring, the framework of impact target setting, all this were very different from the stage before 2015, before the SDG goals were established. So to a certain extent, we believe that in terms of the drive for the awareness or for, I would say that the momentum in the market about impact investment, it definitely includes various factors, and overall, we believe that the momentum will continue.
Right, I'd like to get Marcus' thoughts on this as well. Given the different level of ESG implementation across the regions, what are the initiatives that DEWG has created to bridge the gap of the different understanding and the varying policies globally?
Yeah, thanks, Avina. So when we get in contact with our fund partners, when we see a direct investment opportunity and we have the first conversations with our potential investee, we of course see that not everything is perfect right from the beginning. And if it was, then we wouldn't have any role anymore to play. So we usually, we work with partners who are willing to implement certain standards, and often we already see a foundation. So what we, for example, offer, we offer some promotional programs for our partners we work with. We have programs for our fund partners. So one program, for example, is called BSS, that's a business support service. And that is the joint engagement of consultants to implement an environmental and social management system for fund managers, which actually is a tool which can be used to assess E&S risk in investments. So it's very usual upon due diligence. It implies an analysis of each investee and a gap analysis, as well as an action plan. So, and an action plan is about a budget which is needed to fix certain things, as well as a time frame. We also offer some initiatives under this BSS for our investees. That could be, for example, energy efficiency checks. We just recently did for a larger agri-tech company, even here in Indonesia, we did together with our fund partner an E&S review, and that helped to identify risk and also to work on an action plan. And since there are thousands of local suppliers involved, that has E&S has quite a relevant aspect of it. Then there are other aspects are, for example, occupational health and safety, water treatment, and this kind of stuff. And then we use this program also for the fintech sector. So this is about financial inclusion. So we helped one fund manager, it was one tech company in Africa to come up with a strategy how to expand into rural Africa, because there we saw a lot of market opportunity, but also impact opportunity. And then we helped another fintech company here in Indonesia, and that was about the ethical collection of money. That was a field we explored a little bit deeper. And beyond this BSS, we have also other programs for startups. One is our upscaling program that is for very small startups in fintech or in clean tech. And this is predominantly for Africa, where we put relatively small amount, invest up to $500,000 US into those companies. But this is all on top of our ordinary investment program.
Great program. We definitely have seen the BSS support here at these ventures. And also one of our startup here, I just saw the booth, Aruna, in front of this hall, have worked with DEWG on the BSS support and also supplying their sustainable fisheries practices as well, and their fish here actually to the hotel. So very excited to see all the collaborations coming together. To add, Marcus, just a follow-up question. When do you think companies should start focusing on incorporating a more comprehensive ESG framework to create impacts?
Sorry, can you say again because of this echo?
When do you think companies and startups should focus on incorporating a more comprehensive ESG framework and creating impacts?
Yeah, I think the earlier the better, but of course at the beginning things are not that complex. I think ESG at the beginning of an investment idea should not be only seen as a compliance matter. It's actually even more a risk management tool. So ESG should be considered as managing risks, and there are many cases where companies had to be shut down for E&S reasons. So, and therefore, I think it's at least good when you start a business to think about these things, even if you don't have a complex framework in place. So think about the E. I mean, energy efficiency, as I said, is something which is the theme of today. It's very important to achieve our Paris Agreement, for example. And then think about waste and think about how to be part of the circular economy. The S is also very important. Think about working condition, human rights, diversity and inclusion. And the G, what we think is often underestimated, this is something like cybersecurity. So we see this as a big risk and should be considered right from the beginning. And then of course, once you approach investors to come in, then of course you also need to have an idea how to govern your company. So what are the organs? Do you have a board? How well are you structured? What is your information policy? So it's a gradual process where you start thinking of all this and then it's more and more developed into a framework.
All right. Eduardo, what's your thoughts on that? When do you think startups and venture capital should think about ESG and impacts, taking into account your many years experience in South Africa, Europe, and the US?
Yeah, so I mean, just building on what we were talking about earlier, I think the first step is understanding whatever you do has to be in line with your capabilities and your bandwidth at the time to make sure that the effort is meaningful, right? So if you are day one startup and pre-seed and you're just building it out, you could have an idea of where you want to go ESG and incorporate it, but really it's about building out the operation. And as long as you stay honest and true to what your principles are and embed that over time, you can do that very organically as you scale. Obviously then work with VCs and partners and investors that can help you on that journey. So I think it's really about that commitment to continuous innovation and development and improvement in that area. So I think that's the ethos. I think in terms of how you scale it up, obviously it will vary for each firm.
All right.
Yeah.
From your investing experience, what do you think are the challenges and opportunities faced by the startups and the investors in terms of incorporating the ESG?
I think, you know, it varies across the board, but really it's again, as an investor, you see a lot of this greenwashing going on, and it's sometimes hard to cut through and say what are the efforts that are actually genuine and meaningful, and the DD and the monitoring and everything doesn't always show that up. So really it's just, there's no substitute for spending time on the ground and really just keeping a moral compass and understanding, does this sound right despite what I might see on a deck or whatever. So I think that as an investor, that's usually the challenge. Obviously where you can align with like-minded GPs or LPs. I mean, it's great to be on the cap table with someone like DEWG because you know they've already done a lot of work on the framework, and you know that you can sort of work with them on developing these companies together. So I think that is a challenge, but also an opportunity. I think the opportunity is, as I said, if you're thinking about it in terms of building a sustainable long-term business, you already have the platform to incorporate all of these factors as you go and as you scale without it becoming too burdensome. So I don't think it has to be a trade-off.
How about in terms of collaborations between the private and public stakeholders, right? In terms of improving the effectiveness and implementation towards meeting the sustainable development goals?
Yes, I think this also plays a little bit into role of government and role of private sector and role of long-term asset allocators. So I think it's all really important. I think the space where governments play a critical role that you can't really substitute for is to be that catalyst for innovation in many ways. So it could either be through direct investment in technologies that are nascent, helping them grow, getting to a scale which becomes investable commercially, or if you don't have the firepower or the ability to do it on day one, at least create the preconditions for that innovation and experimentation to start somewhere. So I think, I was reading somewhere that I think the US government is probably the most successful VC investor in history if you think about investment in the space rate and things like computing and transistors and clean tech early on and batteries. So if you follow that through in long term, government plays a role, but obviously then private investors has to come in to grow that. I feel where family office such as ourselves and others can play a role and almost a duty to say, okay, well, we can take sometimes that first loss capital, we can sometimes take the long-term view that a fund may not, because if you're 7 to 10 years closed-ended, you may have certain constraints that we may not have, so we have that duty to come in and help these foster these, and then obviously the expertise of the VC funds coming in to really improve these companies and help them grow over time and operate over time, it becomes really important as well. So you need that collaboration across the board.
Right, and that's the goal, I think, for one of these conversations that we're having at the G20 Digital Innovation Network. Since my questions are the only thing standing between all of us and lunch time, I'm going to ask my last question to all of your panelists here. How important is the role of the government in supporting the investors, startups, and private sectors in achieving the sustainability through regulation in the post-pandemic era? I'll leave to any of you two who would like to start first.
Maybe I start. Okay, actually, the government definitely need to play a big role here. I would say that the most important thing is that to build and strengthen the ecosystem. There are a couple of elements there, and one is that I don't think the government should directly compete with the private sector. So if in certain areas that the public sector money is not needed, the government shouldn't really invest heavily into that space. And another thing is that the government or the public sector capital should play a bigger catalytic role. So try to mobilize more private sector money into the areas that the private sector is not willing to go either at that particular moment or in a long term. So at that time, the public sector probably should play a big role in catalyzing more capital or more patient capital into that space. Actually, the last one is exactly what the previous panel mentioned, and the government should probably, it's not only short term, but have a long-term goal about how to supply qualified talents to the industry, to different sectors. And need to have very specific short-term deliverables. So in this space, we see that various governments in the region are really doing very well. But at the same time, everyone is learning by doing in this space. So we do expect that there will be some mistakes, but at the same time, they shouldn't stop government trying.
Yeah, I also agree that governments play a significant role in this entire context. We see when it comes to, let's say, ESG sustainability standards, we see a, let me say, difference in, of course, developed markets have stricter standards, higher standards compared to developing markets. I think that's a clear observation. Nevertheless, in developing markets, we have, or many of developing markets, emerging markets, have ESG standards. The bigger issue is more the implementation and monitoring of those standards. I think it's easier in developing countries to find a way to not needing to be in compliance with these standards. So what the role of the government could be to be stricter in monitoring and go after those who don't apply. And often we as investors have to step in, and those companies we are financing, we have to take care that they are in line with their local requirements. Another aspect, since you're asking what can governments do, I mean, governments can make use of the technology which is developed by all these startups. So digitalization of government will help entrepreneurs to get a better orientation of what is required, and also for applications and so on and so forth. So digitalization is a big topic, I'm sure, also for many governments.
Yeah, I mean, look, we try to, I mean, we talked a little about the role that governments can play in directly supporting and investing in new technologies. I think the other side of it is role of regulators, right? And we like to think of it as you get rules-based regulations, which, okay, very micromanaging, this is what you must do, and they try to enforce it always kind of retroactively. Or you have goals-based regulation, which is kind of more forward-looking and more creates the space for innovation, right? And obviously, the latter is much more conducive, we feel, to the growth of, ESG frameworks, venture capital, and so on, and greater investment. And I think that that's where we like to operate a deal. Obviously, we've seen that. We've seen beginnings of that in a number of countries from different regions, including here in Indonesia, around the foreign investment. I think Omnibus and other areas to boost VC growth. So I think if you take that mindset as a government, ultimately realize, the most enduring societies have always been the ones who play the long-term game, and being able to take that view to regulation always allows you to be a step ahead of the game. So.
All right, so collaborations, working together, having government work together with the startups in terms of solutions, and letting innovations to flourish with supportive regulations. We do hope that these conversations can bring about stronger collaborations and investment opportunities that deliver great, strong financial returns and also positive impacts to the society and environment. So with that, we'll close this panel. Please give a hands of applause to all our panelists. Thank you so much for coming here. With that, I'll turn it back to the MC.
Thank you very much for our panelists, and once again, thank you for Ms. Afina Sugiarto for moderating the discussion session in this event. Now let's take a photo session together, as we did with the last session. Thank you very much. Thank you once again. And ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we have reached the end of our journey today on this day. And we'd like to thank you very much for attending today's event.
And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to also inform you for the next agenda for today, where after the lunch break, we will be having a startup pitching, which will be happening in 5 breakout rooms, which is the first breakout room with the topic healthcare at the Bougainville and also Orchid Room. And the second is the breakout room 2, which will discuss supply chain at the Hibiscus and Frangipani Room. The breakout room 3 with green and renewable energy at Nusantara Room. And the breakout room 4, education technology at Nusantara 2 Room or Nusantara 2 Room. And the breakout room 5, which will discuss financial inclusivity at Nusantara 3 Room. And ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to also inform you that we will be having a one-on-one business meeting at the BICC Nusantara Foyer, and also a startup exhibition, which will be followed by a gala dinner at 6 p.m. local time. And lastly, I'm Sarah Wayne.
And I'm Ralph Tampubolon, signing off as your Master of Ceremony of the day. We thank you very much for attending, and we certainly hope to see you again tomorrow. And please remember,
Recover together, recover stronger. Thank you.